Welcome, everyone, to DCR Out Loud. My name is McKinney, and I'm the Public Outreach Director in the Division of Cannabis Regulation. As we indicated in our last episode, our very own director, Amy Moore, will be the co-host every other month. I'm so happy to have you here on a regular basis, and I appreciate you taking the time for us.
Of course. I'm very happy to be here. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so this is our first episode co-hosting together, and I can't believe we are already in fall. What a busy, crazy summer it's been.
Yes, I know we're going to talk more about this, but as it happens, August seemed to be particularly busy for no reason. It just happens that way, but it has been a very busy summer.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the reasons for recalls and how we balance out health and safety and business impacts. We'll have Lindsey Rutz in the No Zone talking about facility types and what activities are permitted. We also will have Lesley Turek, the new Chief Equity Officer, or newish, I guess I should say, to tell us a little bit about herself and what's coming up. And we'll round it out with some general updates. Amy, are you ready to get to it?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. We all know that in August, DCR issued administrative holds, which ultimately required a couple of recalls. Pursuant to 19 CSR 100-1.100 4P, the Division of Cannabis Regulation may issue a public notice of recall where marijuana product presents a potential threat to health and safety, which may include when marijuana product is not compliantly tested or tracked in the statewide track and trace system, which is called Metric, before sale to patients and consumers. As mandated by Article 14 and 19 CSR 100-1, DCR informs the public of marijuana product recalls through a department news release. A list of impacted products and additional information may be provided on our website. So, Amy, how does the division determine if a recall needs to be issued? What are some examples that require a recall?
Well, first of all, I want everyone to notice that you don't shy away from the big issues. So here we are talking about our recalls. So I think some of the best examples are the ones you mentioned. So, for instance, where marijuana product is not compliantly tested or tracked in the statewide track and trace system. These are very important. Ultimately, we really have to look at whether there is a threat to health and safety, public health, public safety, product safety. And in both those examples, that's really what's at issue. Testing and tracking are two of the foundational protections in place in our regulated system. That's what makes this so different from unregulated cannabis. And it's meant to ensure that we are providing the safest product that we can.
Right. So sometimes among licensees and maybe even the public, there seems to be some confusion about whether tracking issues equals problems with our testing system. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Right. Yes. I've had a few of those conversations recently, and I really want to emphasize that it's not always the case when there are compliance concerns that we can really solve that by testing. So, with testing, it's pretty easy for most people to understand why we'd be concerned. We have this whole testing panel. It's there. It's essentially built over time with all of the regulated systems, what has been, tested over time to be appropriate or helpful or necessary for testing cannabis product in a regulated system. And if that's not there, well, obviously, then the implication is that the product is not as safe as it could be, as safe as we intend. But with tracking, you really have to understand the purpose, the reason why we track product, and also the alternative to a regulated tracked product. Essentially, when we have this big endeavor of tracking product through an entire market from little seed or immature plant stage all the way as it spreads out, goes into manufactured products or to dispensaries, gets combined with other product all the way to where we sell it, we're trying to do a couple things. We're trying to keep our arms around this product so we know what to sample to ensure that we have an appropriate sample and thus our testing system can work. But we're also tasked with using the system to prevent diversion and inversion of product. And so for those who aren't familiar with those terms, that's ensuring that regulated product doesn't go out to feed the illicit market and that we're not supporting the illicit market by allowing those products to come into the regulated market. And that is a complicated task, but it's one of the really core things we've been asked to do in our law and in a lot of the regulated systems. You think about what are the implications of that. If you have failure to track, you don't know where that product came from. If you can't show that it came from a Missouri regulated cultivator, then that in itself is a very egregious violation of the constitutional law. It's not just rules we came up with, and it's violating law that is there for two of the primary foundational concerns of the regulated system: to not be feeding or supporting the illicit market, and to ensure that we can properly test. If you don't have that record of reality that is the track and trace system, if you don't have that, you can't ensure that your product was really tested correctly. And if you don't know where that product came from, then even just by testing it later in this testing system that was designed for the regulated world, that testing system is not designed to protect against a lot of what is used on product in the illicit market, highly toxic, very illegal pesticides that don't get into our regulated market and aren't used in our regulated market. It's not designed to protect about the host of things that could be used on illicit product. And it's also not designed to detect and protect against everything that could come from converted product. And what we're talking about there is where a business takes CBD or some other product like that, puts it through a chemical conversion process with certain solvents, and what comes out the other end is an intoxicating product. We see that in the unregulated market. We don't allow that in the regulated market, and our testing system is not designed to detect that either. So we can't just say, put it through the regulated market testing system and it's safe, when you potentially have these other problems.
Yeah, I think that when I go out and visit licensees, that has always been the hardest thing to explain, is that our testing is set up for the regulated market, not unregulated market.
Right. And that's natural to wonder about that. I think the public wonders about that as well. I thought you guys tested. Doesn't that mean if it's been through testing, it's safe? Maybe I should really emphasize that our testing system is really robust. We have regulatory oversight over the facilities to see what they're using in their products, to watch their processes, to ensure they have SOPs in place that protect against contamination, to ensure that their sampling procedures are followed so that we really can trust the testing results. Our testing system is great for the regulated market with a fully compliant seed to sale tracking.
Recalls are not a fun thing. I think I learned pretty quickly when I entered the division and we experienced that first recall. I think I was only here 2 months, how seriously the division takes issuing recalls. It's something that's not taken lightly, and I don't think anyone ever wants to do it. There are business impacts to the industry, and when that happens, it's hard to kind of look at business impact and the health and safety to the public and Missouri citizens.
That's right. Yeah, let's talk about that. I think there will always be a tension in balancing health and safety concerns with business impact in this regulatory scheme. And that's because while health and safety takes a high priority in our law, some would say the highest priority with the way it's written, there are also provisions in the law that tell us to focus on the impact of our regulations on businesses. Ensure that they're not unduly burdensome. So while we can't decide to ignore health and safety concerns due to the scope of their business impact, we do take that into account when making decisions. And, that is particularly relevant in wanting to be sure, like very sure of the circumstances and the facts before issuing a recall. But then we also don't want to delay issuing a recall until we have every possible related detail locked down if we know enough to know that there's a threat to health and safety. So we're right back here in that balance of our responsibility and balance in making that call. It's not easy, and we have a really great staff getting better every day as we had a huge influx right around the time of that recall. And when you joined us as well, we just continue to get better. They're great. A lot of expertise to apply in these situations now. So we do our best, We do. And we're always willing to answer questions to the extent we can with ongoing investigations about why we're proceeding the way we do in these situations. So this is probably a good time to note that no one should assume anything I'm describing today is taking place at facilities currently subject to investigation. We don't discuss the details of ongoing investigations until we make final conclusions. So just like in a court, we should all assume the final conclusions could go in any direction. And specifically in our world, when we have track and trace or testing issues, we can ultimately conclude that product is safe, can be remediated, or must be destroyed. And that's quite a scale of possible conclusions. And we need to finish an investigation before any of us draw conclusions.
Yeah, and so we have had a lot of conversations with licensees. I go out or make an effort to go out and make phone calls after a recall for that exact reason, to find out, how are things going? Are your vaults full? What do you all need? Is that everything okay? So I think we do a really great job of trying to communicate with them as much as we can, like you said, with an ongoing investigation, and then hearing from our licensees and taking those phone calls and answering questions to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I love that you make those calls. It takes time. And they're hard conversations, and you elicit those conversations. Thank you for doing that. I think it makes us all better. Oftentimes, people may not know, but those conversations that you have with licensees, you bring back information to us about themes, what we may need to communicate about more or better. So we'll keep trying to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. For more information about recalls or what recalls have been issued recently, you can visit our cannabis.mo.gov. It's on our front page under recalls information. It's about that time. It's time for the Know Zone, our monthly segment that keeps you in the know. This month, Lindsey will be talking all about the licensed facility types. Take it away, Lindsey.
Thanks a bunch, Tara. So this month, we'll be talking about the Permitted Licensee Activities Guide that we just released in August of 2024. So we're really excited about this guide. It really goes through the permitted activities section of rule and really goes line by line and explains what each one of those permitted activities is, including what are some compliant activities as well as non-compliant activities that we've seen around each one of those rule sets. It's really great to start adding a lot of clarity to what can and can't be done at a licensed facility.
Tell us a little bit about what the different facilities are in the guide.
So we have 3 different facilities outlined in our guide. We start with our cultivation facilities. We talk about our manufacturing facilities as well as our dispensary facilities. As you look at our Rule 19 CSR 100-1, each type of facility has a section of rule that pertains specifically to them, as well as other sections of rule that pertain to all of them. With that, the permitted activities guide really focuses in on what those licensees' specific permitted activities are, including what they can and can't do in terms of marijuana, like with cultivating, infusing, distribution, as well as some other things that may be a little bit more obscure, like transferring and what kind of product can be transferred, how, when, and where, and who can transfer certain different types of products as well, or provide, I should say, different types of products.
So how many facility types do we regulate here at DCR?
Oh, goodness. I would have to count them, I think, out loud. So we can start with the origin of marijuana in our industry, which is the cultivation facility. And then cultivators can provide a final marijuana product directly to dispensaries, or they may want to provide what is called more like a raw plant material to a marijuana manufacturing facility. Those manufacturing facilities will then make concentrates out of some of this plant material. They may choose to just make some pre-rolls out of this plant material as well. The manufacturing facilities are the ones, though, that are allowed to create those infused products. So anything really that has a concentrate of some kind in it came from a manufacturing facility. Those manufacturing facilities then can also produce raw materials for other facilities in the form of concentrate, or they can go ahead and create final products themselves. That could be just concentrate again itself, or they could infuse it into other products like lotions, brownies, chocolates, vape cartridges, different things like that.
And then finally, it ends up at a dispensary, right?
Yes, always. So dispensary is the only place that you can purchase Missouri marijuana. The products in the dispensary facilities have to go through a mandatory testing process. That is actually talked about a little bit in the guide too, on who can and can't test the final product that's being produced. There's a lot that takes into consideration, as well as reminding licensees that this isn't the only portion of rule that you have to look at. You also have to incorporate what the permitted activities are here into how they're outlining the rest of their processes and procedures with the rest of rule, like security and general permitted activities.
Awesome. So where can we find this snazzy guide?
This snazzy guide can be found on our facility communications and guidance page. This is something that is a great resource area for all licensees. It is under our general guidance area on that page.
All right. And you can find that at cannabis.mo.gov.
Facility communications and guidance.
All right. Thanks so much, Lindsey, for getting us in the know. Will we see you next month?
You'll see me next month,
All
as
right.
always.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're back and we have a few licensee updates for you.
Yes, quick hits. So first, remember, November 1st, 2024, we have a packaging and labeling deadline coming up. At that time, dispensary licensees may not sell any marijuana product that does not have an approved item approval number on the label, which is required by rule. And existing items at a dispensary facility must be either destroyed or repackaged into compliant packaging by the licensee that created the final marijuana product. You can check out the item approval applications dashboard at cannabis.mo.gov and click on the data and reports tile to see how those processes are going.
Microbusiness Welcome Meeting will be held in Jefferson City on November 13th. This welcome meeting is for round 2 microbusiness licensees. However, if you missed the first one that we had for round 1, you're welcome at this one as well. Be looking out for more information on that. You can visit cannabis.mo.gov and click on the microbusiness tile.
And finally, the division will hold virtual licensee educational sessions in November. In October, Jason Brooks will be on DCR Out Loud to discuss them and provide more information.
That's right. That's all we have for right now. Up next, we have Lesley Turek, our Chief Equity Officer, here to talk about what she's been up to and a little bit about herself. So stay tuned. Hi, Lesley. Welcome to DCR Out Loud. We're so happy to have you here.
Yes, very happy to see you. So you've been here in your new role for a few months now. Maybe for people who don't know, I'll give a brief overview of what a micro business is. These are small businesses that the law laid out particular eligibility criteria for. And if you're eligible to run one of these small cannabis businesses, you can enter a lottery and be issued a license if you win the lottery. And then you proceed from there. I mentioned it's a small business. There are a few restrictions that are on these businesses and who they can sell to, who they can buy from, how big they can be. But really, I think the best thing is to think about them as a small business version of a cannabis licensee. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, okay.
So we just wanted to have you on and introduce yourself. Tell us how you landed here in cannabis regulation and now being the Chief Equity Officer.
Yes, I am the Chief Equity Officer. I have some very big shoes to fill, and I am doing the best I can. I am originally a Missouri girl, moved out of state and worked in different things here and there. I spent a lot of time as an educator and actually taught middle school language arts for quite a while and loved it, but needed kind of a change. And I wanted to move back to Missouri to be closer to family. I came back to Missouri and just kind of by chance ended up in cannabis regulation. Never thought I'd see myself in this position, but I've learned so much here. I started off in business licensing services as a supervisor, found that fascinating. And when this opportunity became available, I thought, well, I'll give that a try for a little while. I've met some really wonderful people here at DCR, and I'm just starting to meet some of the licensees that we have for microbusiness. And it's been really great getting to know them, getting to understand where they are, what their expectations are, what their hopes are in this new program that we have.
Yeah, you have such a great background for this with your vast experience in training and teaching, where so many of the chief equity officers' explicit roles are about providing technical technical assistance and education about the program. That's going to be so helpful. I'm really glad you were interested in this. And then coming to us from Business Licensing Services, where you had already been deep in the review of microbusinesses in the first round. That's a really unique perspective to bring to this as well. You're going to be great.
So far, so good.
Yeah. And this is a great time, exciting time. We've been through 2 rounds of microbusiness applications. What's next after that? What happens after the second round of applications?
Well, eventually we have to get to a third round.
Yeah.
We have a minimum 144 licenses that we have to give out. And so we have another round coming up, hopefully in the spring. We haven't really finished our timeline yet and our schedule, but that's what we're looking forward to, spring of 2025. And then really my objective, I think, is to do as much as I can to help all of the licensees, microbusiness licensees, become operational. There's only so much I can do, but I do think education is a huge part of it. I think understanding what their needs are and helping to fill that void for them, but within the limitations of a regulatory agency as well. So yeah, I have lots of different ideas. I'm trying to reach out to the licensees to find out their perspectives as well, what kind of support they need. So I have a lot of work ahead of me, but I'm looking forward to it because that does give me that chance to use that part of my background, that education part of it. And then I'm really excited to meet as many people as I can. So, and we have a microbusiness welcome meeting coming up too. So we'll be having that for round 2 licensees. There is a survey coming out soon. I'm not sure quite when. Hopefully in the next few weeks, that's really going to allow the licensees to tell us what it is that they need, what kind of support they need, whether that's an education program, whether that's more communication from us, whether that's a speaker series that we could offer, but any kind of support. I'd really love to encourage all of the licensees to be looking for that survey and please answer back. That's the way I can hear your voice in my own way and be able to then help provide what you need.
Yeah, that's great. Kind of along those lines, how do you see the difference between your role and that focus versus the role and focus of a compliance officer?
Oh, I think it's vastly different. A compliance officer, to me, is really focused on that rule part of it. Microbusiness licensees are expected to follow the same compliance rules that regular licensees follow. And I really highly encourage them every time I talk to them. No rule, read rule. You have a question, call your compliance officer. They're the ones who are going to be able to answer those questions for you. I am not in compliance. My role, I feel like, is more of the role of support through the business side of things and providing more generalized information on how to support them. I can always refer them to a compliance officer for direct questions, but I don't want to say that I'm an expert in that way at all. I think it's that support of how can I make my business grow? How are we going to make this program successful? How are we going to move forward in a space where we're the little guy in a very large industry in Missouri? How can we provide what Missouri citizens want in maybe a specialized way, in a little bit different way? So I think there's lots of opportunity for education. It's just, I think we have to adjust ourselves a little bit and know, I know I only have so much knowledge in this brain of mine. And so I can't provide them everything, but I'm constantly referring them to compliance officers because that's really where they're going to get the meat of the rule and really understand how they're going to fit and become operational in that way.
Yeah. I understand you've gotten some pretty good feedback from some microbusiness licensees about their interactions with their compliance officers.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually been on 2 tours now. We have 2 cultivators that are commenced and operational. And so I've gone to visit both of them and they've had glowing things to say about their compliance officers. So I know our compliance team goes above and beyond to help as much as they can. So yeah, I've had great tours, very vastly different from regular licensee tours, lots smaller facilities, but lots and lots of enthusiasm and excitement about the program and very hopeful that things are moving forward. So I'm looking forward to some more licensees from round 1 getting closer and closer to operational and start asking for some commencement inspections, and we're going to get moving forward, hopefully.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And in our roles, we kind of mirror each other a lot. in offering outreach and resources. And like you said, having those compliance officers be there for them when it comes to compliance issues. And we're just here as a little extra resource. So it's really
got a bit of a liaison role there. In addition to everything else, becoming an expert in who you can connect them with, particularly here in the division for whatever the needs are.
Yeah, it can be confusing at times. So it's nice to have that bridge.
Yes.
To find somebody who, when they call you and say, I don't know who to talk to. And you're like, I will figure that out for you. Don't you worry. So yeah, it's nice to be that connection for them.
If you want to find out more information about microbusiness and upcoming information and events that'll be available, you can go to our website at cannabis.mo.gov and click on the microbusiness tile. Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you.
Today was a great episode. We talked about recalls, microbusiness, gave a few updates, and had Lindsey with the No Zone. Really appreciate our listeners tuning in with us today, and it was so great to have you here, Amy.
Yeah, this is great. I'm going to really enjoy doing more of this. And I mentioned positive feedback about compliance officers when we were talking about microbusinesses. And I just want to say I got several people reaching out to us about the podcast generally, and also the most recent episode we had. I think people are listening and enjoying. So great job.
I have heard a lot from licensees as well about the podcast. And when we were on break for a little bit, they're like, you are bringing that back, aren't you? And
Yeah, that's
I'm like, yes, we are. And so I got a lot of compliments about you and Lyndall and your interview. And so looking forward to the next 6 months of season 1 and beyond. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
All right. I think that's all we have for today. Keep up to date between episodes. There are several ways that you can stay informed. You can subscribe to our email list to receive emails from DCR on various topics and customize it to your needs. Go to cannabis.mo.gov and click on Join Our Email List under Contact Information. The Cannabis Connection newsletter is published quarterly and is your information link to Missouri's Division of Cannabis Regulation. And finally, for outreach events and more, you can visit cannabis.mo.gov and click on DCR Communication and Resource tile.
Yes. Thank you, Tara. Appreciate all our listeners. Thanks, and see you next time.
See you next time.
This podcast content is intended for adults over the age of 21 years old and is best to be used for informational purposes only. The content does not constitute official compliance or regulatory guidance. The department and author assumes no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this podcast. The information contained in this podcast is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness. Cannabis licensees should consult with their assigned compliance officer for rules and regulations specific to their facility. The content is not intended to diagnose or treat any medical condition and should not be relied on for any medical purposes. Patients and the public should consult with their healthcare providers about medical-related questions and the impact of cannabis on health. If you believe you are having a medical emergency, call emergency services. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed herein are those of the authors, presenters, and do not necessarily represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by, the U.S. government, Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, or the government of the state of Missouri.